Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yeah.
Amazing. Hi. So, as you all know, I am Coach Sierra. I'll be teaching your group for today. We will start promptly at 6:05 p.m. So that's in about 3 minutes from now. That gives any latecomers a chance to come on in. If you haven't already, please use the restroom, grab a pen and paper, grab some water, and then we'll get started in 3 minutes, okay? Awesome. I'll see you then. Awesome. Hey everyone. So I see that a few of you have joined since I made my announcement. I am Coach Sierra. I'm the Research and Assessment Specialist here with Academic Coaching for World Changers. And today we're going to get started on research. Now, I'm pretty sure all of you are new faces to me because I typically don't see a lot of people from the social work exam. So let's get to know each other. I'm looking at the faces on the screen. How are you all? Let's do some brief introductions. Tell me your name, how long you've been studying for this test, and anything you just want me or us to know. So we'll start off with Jacqueline.
Hello, I am Jacqueline Bell, but I go by Jackie, and I have been studying for my exam, seemed like forever. The last time I took my exam was, I think it was April, and I failed by I think like 12, by 12 points.
Okay, and this is your second time taking the test.
No, I took it.
That's okay. You don't have to share.
Yeah.
Okay. Any tips or things that you have learned from your experience, like any words of wisdom, like totally make sure you study this, or I thought this was going to be on the exam, but I actually didn't see that many questions.
Actually, I felt like when I took the exam, each time I took the exam, I feel like what I studied, I'm like what I was studied wasn't relevant to the exam. I'm like I studied all of this material, but most of it was not on the exam. But then again, each time is different. Cause like one time I took the exam, it was more community questions. And then another time I took the exam, it seems like it was just heavily loaded with nothing but like ethics.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
With those
Yeah.
different
So
versions coming through.
yeah, it's like the different version. But my advice is just to definitely study, make sure that you're prepared, and then also knowing the strategies, how to take the test, how to break down those questions, but most of all, definitely know your content, because you definitely got to know the content.
Okay, okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing, Jackie. Let's go to Dion.
Hello, my name is Dion. I took the exam in September and did not pass, of course, because I'm here. And
Hi,
so
welcome.
thank you. I kind of found this YouTube video of Dr. Pam, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like where has she been? And so I felt like she's really changing the way I've been studying and finding other videos that you think are helpful, but it's like I felt like it really only just confused it more for me. I don't think it helped in any way of how to prepare for the exam. I think it just was giving us content after content, and you're learning all these acronyms, and it seemed like you were studying more of the acronyms than actually studying. So now it's just about changing the way I think and how I'm looking at the questions.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm probably needing to, I think Dr. Pam just gave me a test. And so if I can kind of see I'm struggling with ethics more than anything right now. And so
Mhm.
I would like to get sharpen my skills more on that. But this will be my
Okay,
second time, but I have not set a date yet, because now I just want to make sure that I grasp the material before I set a date.
right, right. So I'm hearing some trends here of covering content is important, but really having those test taking and study tips really down as well to be able to balance those both.
Yes.
Awesome, Jackie and Dion, thanks for sharing. Let's go to
Well,
Evelyn.
Hello. As you,
Hi
as you,
there.
hi. As you can tell, I am multitasking here. I have half of my year here and then half of my year like getting myself organized. I'm just having like a really, really hectic term. I'm navigating a lot of complex situations. At the same time, I'm studying for and just kind of anyways. I am scheduled to write my BSW exam on December 13th. And I really want to take it and pass it. This will be my first time, and I hope this will be my last time because it's giving me so much stress. And I feel like if I pass it, then it will be one less thing in my plate to worry about. I'm so thankful for also, I think, yeah, just for finding Dr. Penn's videos through YouTube. I was like desperate looking for someone who could help me to understand this, and so grateful. And I assume, Sierra, you are Dr. Pam's daughter?
I am Dr. Pam's daughter. Some people were probably guessing that, but you are a brave one. I always say the ones who say it are the ones who are brave. Not that anyone else isn't brave, but yes, I am.
Oh, nice to meet you then. Thank you so much. You're so blessed to have a mom like Dr. Pam
Thank
with a
you.
big
Thank
heart.
you. Nice to meet you too. There are three of us, I will say, so I'm not the only one. There is an older one and a younger one.
Oh, okay. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you. And to Evelyn's point, I'm sure that all of you were trying to do this, right? Where you're trying to balance your life and studying for the exam, that this exam needs to be your life and you're doing your best to make it your life. But at the same time, there are other family and life obligations that you're trying to balance. Because we have a smaller, intimate group, I'm guessing this is providing some sense of at least relief for you. Studying for this exam can feel a very isolating experience, right? Especially if you study, and then you don't pass, and it's just like this maybe shame and embarrassment hole, right? That you're just in and no one's there. So just for those of you who are like, what are we doing in the beginning of the call? I just want to build a little bit of community here, because this exam could feel so isolating. And I think if you're trying to study and you're trying to move through and you're being faced with extreme waves of loneliness, loneliness is just not the best way to conquer the material. So even if you guys never meet with each other and you're not studying with each other, in the back of your head, you're like, oh, Evelyn gets me. Evelyn understands why I'm trying to study this and do this and do this and do that. And so you just have that sort of momentum and wave behind you of people, because in our Facebook groups, typically we see the people who are passing, right? Like, whoa, I passed and you can too. But just creating also that space of like, hey, I'm on my way to pass and I'll see you there in just a moment. And so there's other people here. So let's go to Rochelle. Rochelle, introduce yourself. Let us know how long you've been studying and any words or wisdom you have from your study experience.
Well, I've been studying for some time now. I took the test back in March of 2020, and I didn't pass. I missed it by like 13. And I tried to go back and take it, but all this stuff going on with COVID, I didn't get an opportunity. So actually, I'll be taking it tomorrow.
Okay. So best of luck. You've got this. We'll cover research today, and I'll be sending out materials at the end of the meeting. All right. And I'll make sure to get them out today rather than later, given that timeline. Okay. See, Zoe.
Hey Sierra, it's Zoe.
Hi, Zoe.
I'm studying for my LC. It's coming up in December. The last time I took it was in August for my first time. I would say know your content. I don't think we emphasize that enough. Everybody just says, oh, you just need testing strategies. Not for LC. I would say no content. That's like your biggest thing. But yeah, that's me. I'm just making dinner, hanging out, listening, making dinner. So yeah.
Nice to meet you, Zoe. Thank you for sharing. And then I almost called you iPhone 66. I'm glad you changed your name. Kylie, hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're doing great. We're just sharing how long you've been studying for, and if you have any words of wisdom for the group.
Well, I graduated with my master's in social work in 2020. I've taken the test 3 times, going on the 4th in December. This last time I missed it by 18 points. Study the content because you see a lot of it. Also, drill Dr. Pam into your head, because that's where I'm beginning to learn. You got to have the content and you got to have the know-how of putting the content together, which is my biggest struggle.
I don't think you're alone in that experience whatsoever. So let's tie everything together and move forward, all right? So everyone, some test-taking tips and strategies. I am not Dr. Pam. I am trained by Dr. Pam. I work with Dr. Pam, but each coach is a little bit different, and that's the beauty of the company, right? If you find a coach that you align with more, if you find a coach that you like the material, you kind of get those differences. So my biggest test-taking tips is know how you study best. When we enter these group spaces, if you hear that Kylie's really great at flashcards, Dion might start doing flashcards. But if Dion knows that she works really well watching the videos and taking notes, then Dion needs to stick to taking notes. And I don't know how you guys study, so I'm just calling some names as you're being voluntold in my examples. But you get the idea. Sometimes you're studying and you're like, well, this person's doing really, really, really well, and they're doing flashcards, so maybe I should do flashcards. And then in the middle of your study path, you switch paths. And I know it's so tempting, but stick to what you know. So this is what I tell everyone. Think about that freshman class that you did not think you were going to pass. Like you thought you were going to pass, and then grades came out and you're like, ooh. What did you do to pass? What did you do to pass that class? Were you talking to the teacher every day in the office? Were you being that student, you know, with all the questions because you needed that verbal processing and you needed that talk back? Were you taking notes? Were you highlighting? Were you flashcarding? Did you have study groups? Were you watching your own YouTube videos? You know, at the time, maybe YouTube wasn't always popping with all this material, but were you going out of your way to find extra material to supplement the material in class? What did you do to pass that class that you were praying to Lord Almighty that you were not going to fail? That's how you study for this exam. Those grind moments are what you need to be doing. And then we get in these groups, sometimes we just lose our own path. So we're here to build community. We're here to teach. I'll be teaching research today. I've got all the materials for you, but just in the back of your head, think, how do I study best? There's a term called ispatively, comparing you within yourself. Some people call it I-spatively. I-spatively, comparing you within yourself. That is a possible test term, bringing that up for a reason. I-spatively, I'll put it on the screen so everyone can see. It's when you're comparing you within yourself. 1 second. I-spatively, or if the technical phrase is ispatively, but we say I, so you're comparing you within yourself or an individual within an individual. I see your hand, Evelyn. I'll get you in just a second. Then we have norm reference and criterion reference. Norm reference is when you're comparing your score to somebody else, the norm, right? But we know the norm can change. So if you're comparing you to other people, they might be really great in ethics, but you're really great in research. They might be really great in community, but you're really great in ethics. So norm referencing is comparing yourself to others, and this is what we want to shy away from as much as we can. It's normal to compare ourselves, but stay in our lane. And criterion reference is what all of you really should be doing to pass the test, right? Criterion reference is comparing you to a predetermined score. So all of you are trying to pass that passing score, and that passing score was predetermined. They didn't know that your baby was all night crying the night before. They didn't know that your boss was giving you a hard time the day before. The passing score is the passing score is the passing score is the passing score. Criterion reference is predetermined. So there's ispatively or I-spatively, comparing you within yourself. This is how we compare scores. Norm reference, comparing you to others. And the books say when you compare you to others, the concern is you forget what you know. So you got to be careful with that norm reference. And then we have criterion reference, comparing you to a preset or predetermined score. Okay, Evelyn.
Yes, I just want to make sure. Thanks, Sierra. I just wanted to I guess clarify if am I supposed to be here? I'm like a BSW student. Is this relevant?
This is all social work. Social work. As long as you're not taking the NCE or the CPCE, nope. You're in the right spot. Yes. So Saturday groups are for NCE, CPCE counseling exams. Anything on Sunday is for social work. So LCSW, LMSW, BSW, any letter SW, you're in the right group.
Great, thank you.
Of course. Evelyn's like, if I'm not supposed to be here, I'm gonna go make dinner. I'm gonna go do my thing. I'm just checking. Yeah, you're right where you belong.
I wish.
Okay, so that was our first lesson, how we compare scores, okay? So ispatively, norm reference, and criterion reference. I know we have a couple different learning styles, so I'll be mixing up the material and how we do that. So just hang tight, all right? I know I'm not sharing my screen right now. The next thing we're going to move into is qualitative versus quantitative research. Qualitative and quantitative. I'm saying that because in the Zoom call, sometimes if I say it too fast, you might miss what I'm talking about. Qualitative or quantitative. Qualitative is when people are talking. So that la, 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 right? That vocal expression, that's qualitative research. We're getting the lived experiences of people. The lived experiences of people are called phenomena. Phenomena. All right, so if you're studying lived people's experiences, you're studying the phenomena, which is what you do, right? So as a social worker, if you're talking to a young kid and you're asking him about his upbringing, right? And maybe how that might be impacting his grades, you're asking him about his phenomena, his lived experiences. You may not have heard that word before, but that's the word. One of the things I really encourage you to do is when you are studying, really try to break down those big words, even though the big words aren't the exam words, right? Like obviously, ispatively could be on your exam, so you're writing down ispatively. But maybe you're not writing down the word phenomena, you're just writing the word lived experiences. Phenomena is a word that you could see on your exam, but it's not as buzzwordy as like qualitative, quantitative, you know? It's just an advanced vocabulary word. And sometimes when we study for this exam, those big words we just ignore because it's not the main word. It's not the word that we need to know. If I need to know qualitative and quantitative, independent and dependent, I'll learn those words, but I'm not going to learn those extra words. Don't do that. Try to learn those big words. Just advance your vocabulary. It would stink to miss a question just because you didn't know that vocab word. You've been studying and you've been studying, you got all the content, but because you didn't know that vocab word, it's like, I know what the answers are, but I don't know what the question is asking because this vocabulary is a bit more expansive than what I'm used to, which can happen on these standardized exams, right? That they just use big words for what it feels like no reason. So if you run across one of those in your study time, just Google it. Learn new words. It won't hurt you. You might end up using that word. It might be your favorite word. You might end up never using that word, but just encourage yourself to learn for the sake of learning as it relates to vocabulary, just so you're not missing anything simply because it was like an oversight. So why are we talking about phenomena? Phenomena has to do with qualitative, qualitative. That doesn't look like qualitative. There we go. Numbers. Statistics. What else could you see? Maybe even the word statistical outputs. That is all quantitative. Numbers. All right. So if I were to ask you, if you go shopping, right? And I say, hey, can you fill out this survey? And if you fill out the survey, then I call you. That first survey, that is quantitative. That follow-up is qualitative when I'm asking about your lived experience in an open-ended. Remember that anything could be quantitative and anything could be qualitative. Some people say this, you know, quantitative is when you're working in a lab, in a room with lab rats. And then qualitative is like asking how someone feels. Those are two completely different settings and environments. A lot of people think quantitative can only happen in a laboratory with some medicine and some labs, and we're studying this, this, and this. If I were to ask Jackie how she feels on a scale of 1 to 5, that is quantitative. If I were to say, hey, Jackie, how are you feeling today? That's qualitative, right? I'm giving her the space to give this open-ended lived experience response. I'm not confining her to numbers. So really shy away from that cognitive dissonance that people do, that quantitative is something that you would never experience only in a lab with a bunch of scientists and white coats, and qualitative is what we do in counseling and social work. Everyone got it? Okay. You need to know that quantitative can prove cause and effect. Quantitative can prove cause and effect. Qualitative cannot. because then it just becomes he said, she said. If you ever have kids, you know, if you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. When you're trying to figure out what happened, and then they're just like, well, she hit me first, and then he hit me first, and then you're like, both of y'all hug it out and go to your room, right? Because it's hard to find the cause in qualitative when it's just lived experiences, when everyone has their own perspective. But quantitative, oh, she hit me 3 times, I got 3 bruises right here, right? That's fact. That's objective. So quantitative is considered objective, right? So now we've got quantitative can prove cause and effect and is considered objective. And qualitative is considered subjective, meaning subject to the person's experience. So quantitative and prove cause and effect. Is objective. Qualitative is subjective. Can someone remind me what objective and subjective means again?
Objective is based on facts, and subjective is based on experience.
Exactly. Subjective is based off experience. Objective is based on fact. Fact. All right, so I have 1 freckle on my eyebrow. That's objective. I don't like this freckle on my eyebrow. That's subjective. Right now, I've got the lived experience. By the way, I do love this freckle on my eyebrow because that's when I know I need to get my eyebrows done. When I can't see that freckle anymore, I'm like, oh, time to do these babies up. You get the point? Awesome, awesome, awesome. My goal is for this is to make these words come alive, right? You've probably seen these words before. You've probably studied them. You've probably heard a video about them or saw them in class, but they're just like, I think of them as like stale crackers, you know, the minute you touch it, it just crumbles because it's hard to grasp. I want this to be like spaghetti, you know, malleable in your head. You can feel it, you can move it, you can work with it, you get it, you get it. You can understand it in a question. You can understand it when we talk about it. We could be driving down the road and I'm the driver and you're a passenger. And, you know, passengers love to talk when you're driving. And you're like, yeah, Coach Sierra, did you know that quantitative research that looks at numbers and statistical outputs? Did you know that that can prove cause and effect and is objective? Did you know that qualitative is subjective and actually studies phenomena, lived experiences? Crazy, right? That's how I want it to flow. Okay. Let's keep moving forward, Now, there used to be a myth, I call it a myth, that quantitative was more important than qualitative. That quantitative, you know, the businessmen and the numbers and the charts and the facts, and this is everything. And qualitative, y'all social workers over there talking about feelings? What's that? Why we gotta talk about that? What does that do for us? Right? And that was like the myth for so long of this talk therapy stuff, this talking through things, this getting to know the client and building relationships. I just need to know what happened and why. Now, obviously, that's not the case. And when I say, like, I want to say back in the day, but it's really not back in the day. We're talking like 1960s onwards, like qualitative research really was not valued. So for some people, that's back in the day. For some people, that's really not back in the day. I think sometimes we think that some of the obstacles that we have to research were like the 1800s. Like, oh, well, no, this is very recent. Some of these unethical practices and research are in our lived lifetime, our lived experience. And I'm bringing that up because I'm connecting us to something else in just a moment. But just know that quantitative and qualitative are equally important. That's a possible test question. They're both equally valued. They might ask you if one is more valued than the other. They also might ask you, what is it called when you use them together? And that's called mixed methods. Mixed methods. Mixed methods. All right, mixed methods. When you use both qualitative and quantitative together. Now let's break this down even more. Mixed methods, here's a big word for you, write this down, is considered sequential. Does anyone know what the word sequential means? What about the word sequence? Anyone know what a sequence is?
Kind of like in order or something.
Ooh,
Is that what it means?
ooh, yes.
Okay.
Kind of like in order, in order. One second, I gotta chat. Yes, so in order. So sequence is like when one comes, like a sequence. So one comes after another. Mixed methods, quantitative comes first, qualitative comes next. So mixed methods is considered sequential, which comes from the word sequence. But imagine you learn mixed methods, you learn qualitative and quantitative, and you didn't know what sequential meant. So if it says mixed methods is also considered blank type of research, and you see like A, B, C, D, and one of those answer choices are sequential, you might not pick that answer because you're like, I've never used that word. I don't know that word, and I've never seen that word applied. But what the textbooks say is that mixed methods includes quantitative and quantitative, qualitative and quantitative. Quan and annotative comes first. Quantitative comes first. What this looks like in real life is that what this looks like in real life is I give you a survey and then I interview you after.
So
Let's
it's like
see.
a pre-test, post-test type of thing.
Not a pre-test, post-test, more so
Okay.
like one is building, so pre-test and post-test are the same exact thing. A survey is, asking about your lived experience. A survey is asking about your life through a number form. But let's say you fill out the survey. Okay, let's say we're doing like an ACEs, get to know you, right? So ACEs is your adverse childhood experiences. So if I give you an ACEs survey and I see you mark 7 out of 14 on an ACEs survey, I don't know if that's the official range. The ACEs survey has now changed their range, but let's say you get a 7 out of 14 halfway. That interview that follows after is asking you, what is it like to feel like a 7 out of 14? And what is it like to have this awareness that you're a 7 out of 14? So it's not pre and post, because pre and post is the same exact thing, pre and post. But an interview will ask different questions than the survey did. But the interview will ask it in an open-ended, subjective, qualitative way, and a survey will ask it in a numbers, quantitative way. Do you guys, I was told that there's a typo. Do you guys see a typo here that maybe I've messed up on? Or maybe confused qualitative and quantitative? So just to clarify, in case there is, I'll draw lines. You know what? I've got the drawing option to make it. So you have qualitative, subjective, quantitative here. All right, we've got our mixed methods, which is you can use both. And then knowing it here in mixed methods, quantitative comes first, qualitative comes next. If you're a visual learner, your eyes just got a bunch of dopamine. You're like, oh my goodness, here we are color coding. This is so great. If you're an auditory processor, you're like, okay, Coach Sierra, you've been saying the same thing a couple times now. Let's move on. And if you're a visual processor, then, I mean, if you're a kinesthetic learner, you might be wanting me to slow down just a little bit so you can catch these notes. But this is why we have it recording, so all learning styles can go on repeat. Okay, are you ready to move forward? I want to bring up, oh, I don't know exactly who said it, so sorry I'm not giving you credit, but to the person who mentioned pre-test and post-test, let's go there. So the Solomon 4-group design is the name of a test that studies the effect of a pre-test and post-test. So Solomon 4-group is the name of a test that looks at the effect of a pre-test or a post-test. What this means is when you give a pre-test, you are already exposing the people to the material that you want them to learn on the post-test. So when they take the post-test, did they actually gain what they needed to gain from the intervention or the treatment or whatever the program is? Or are they just like A+ overachiever students and just knew that what you asked on a pre-test will show up on the post-test? So in order to manage that effect, we use a Solomon 4-group design. That's all you need to know. There are no further details to this lesson. That's that. But I want to explain to you what I mean by studying the effect of a pre-test or a post-test. If you guys have ever taken a sex education class, if you're in the state of Tennessee, you did not receive sex ed. We typically don't give sex ed in the state of Tennessee, some other states too. But if you did, most sex education classes give you a pre-test and a post-test. The pre-test usually talks about anatomy, like body parts, condom use, birth control, forms of protection, maybe some STI, STD, depending on the language that they used, information. Then they give you a post-test. But the program itself includes all of these things. It will talk about, it'll show pictures and body images and consent and informed consent and this entire lesson. And so when you take the post-test, we run the risk of participants only gathering what the pre-test was asking them on the post-test and not taking in the entire program and the entire intervention. So to monitor that, statistically, we have a Solomon 4-group design. The definition of a Solomon 4-group design says studies the effect of a pre-test and a post-test in a survey. All of the test questions I've ever seen says it studies the effect of a pre-test or a post-test. So you can think of Solomon, if you need a mnemonic device or a little tip to memorize this. Think of Solomon as a guy who genuinely cares about you and your study, right? So let's say Solomon, let's describe him. Let's give him some life. So Solomon's probably like a grandpa who just has this big tender heart and just wants to make sure all of his loved ones, all of his many researchers do well. And he's like, hey, by the way, just be careful. I know you work so hard, making your survey, making your research. And I know you want to have a pre-test just to make sure that people are learning what they're supposed to learn. But sometimes that pre-test can impact your post-test. So I've made something called the Solomon 4-group design. I named it after me because, I'm great, just so you don't forget it. Okay, so that's Solomon. He's a grandpa, and he genuinely cares about the impacts of that post-test for you. Okay. I'm a mnemonic device girl. Dr. Pam is not. She'll be like, okay, y'all can have all those acronyms. Y'all can have all that whole, I saw the dog jumping over the fence just to remember this thing. She's an auditory processor. So she needs that content as it is. No abbreviations needed. I'm a visual learner and I'm a kinesthetic learner. So writing all those notes, no. So I would probably draw a little picture of Solomon, of a grandpa beside my notes, and then I would remember him, because that's how I learned. So again, this is why I say stick to your lane. Stick to your lane. Growing up with Dr. Pam would give me instructions. She'd give it to me auditorily. She'd be like, Sierra, you need to do this, this, and this, and this. but I'm not an auditory processor. So what do you think that meant? I forgot. I left stuff off the list. So what did she start doing? Text me. Now that we have phones and stuff, she'd be like, okay, Sierra, these are the things that I need you to do. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Then they got done very well. So stick to your lane. That's just going back to what we talked about in the beginning. Study how you study, because if you try to study the way someone else studies, you're just going to be frustrated. Okay, that's Solomon 4 group. Let's keep going to independent and dependent. Independent and dependent. Anyone can tell me what these are, independent and dependent?
They're variables.
Ooh, yeah, they are. What's a variable? I know, right? It stumps so many people. It's okay, Kylie, you're not the only ones. But like, it's this word that we use, but then we have to break it down. Like, what's community? Like, what is actually community? You know, we're like, oh, community. Is community you and your friends? Is community you and family? And we know that that term can change depending on the application of the term. So a variable is the name of the thing we are studying. So let's be clear when I say that. A variable is the name of the thing we are studying.
I was going to give you a mathematical and say whatever X is.
Okay. So in that case, a variable is X, right? But an X and Y, those are variables. And this is not math. This is research. So I'm not a math girl. Let me be really clear. I still count on my fingers. Very, very, very confidently count on my fingers. Research is interpreting numbers. Math is calculating numbers. And so because you're calculating so many numbers, this is where you have like 2x squared minus 3. Oh, I'm getting like nauseous even. Okay, I'll stop there. You get the point, right? So on and so forth, all over 2b squared or something. A variable in research is a name. So I'm going to pick on Rochelle. Rochelle is trying to find the right lotion brand for her. Okay. So she uses this lotion brand, and this is actually a real life story. I bought this like Palmer's coconut oil, and it leaves this like very strong white residue on my I look ashier than I did when I put it on. So I'm over here finding a lotion brand, but I'm using Rochelle as an example to make class interactive. So Rochelle's looking for a lotion brand. Okay. So Rochelle is looking for lotion. So lotion is going to be the variable. A variable that we use. And then let's say, oops, sorry. What's one variable? And the other variable is going to be Rochelle's skin.
Okay.
Right? She just want to make her skin feel good. What is the independent variable and what is the dependent variable?
You have control over the
The
load.
independent yeah.
So someone said you have control over the, which one?
Lotion.
So someone says you have control over the lotion. Rochelle, what were you going to say?
I was just gonna say, wouldn't the lotion be the independent variable and my skin be the dependent variable?
You guys, listen, I'm not one to throw shade, but I was teaching group all weekend yesterday, and I taught boot camp the weekend before, and this is for people who have really heavy research and assessment on their exam, and they did not get this right. You guys have research on your exam, and you guys are getting this right. So I'm just saying, like, great job. So some of you identified as independent and dependent. Some of you identified as the one you can control. Let's talk about that. The independent variable is the one that you can control or manipulate. Let's use those big words there, control or manipulate. What does that mean? It's malleable. right? Let's say she finds a lotion and she puts it on and it doesn't really work. Maybe she just needed to add more. Some products you need to add more of the product. Some products you need to add less of the product. If you've ever used the brand Nivea, it's like a blue can. It says Nivea. Some people say Nivea. That thing is thick as heck. You just need a little bit and that will go across your whole hand. If you put too much, you're like a walking grease pit. It's so bad. On the flip side, if you use like the dollar store lotion is very water-based. So you put it on and it's great for like 10 minutes. And then you're back to where you were again. So you have to keep applying that, right? So that independent variable is a variable that you can also manipulate or control. Do you see how there's no limits on how you can manipulate it or control it? It's the independent variable. I'm trying to find the outcome on my dependent variable. So I'm trying to figure out which one's going to get Rochelle's skin to the texture and the smoothness or whatever she's looking for that she wants. Maybe it's a certain smell. The reason why I'm bringing up this lesson and the reason why I'm bringing up how I'm bringing it up is because anything can be the independent variable and anything can be the dependent variable. There's no like, oh, the independent variable is the medicine and the dependent variable is me. And Dr. Pam uses the example of the IV and me. She'll say that the dependent variable is me and the IV is the thing that's going in me. And that's a really great example because she's saying that you are the one who's being measured by the doctors and stuff. And the independent variable is the IV. And you can actually think of like, an IV. The issue if we use too many examples is that sometimes you forget the real definition of it all. So don't get lost in the examples, everyone. The independent variable is the variable we manipulate or control. The dependent variable is the variable that we measure. So when you see test questions, ask yourself, what am I measuring? Always go to the dependent variable. What am I measuring? I'm measuring Rochelle's skin. How am I going to measure this? In real life, I would probably just touch her. I would touch her like on her arm or something to see what that is. Back in the day, they might be like, let's take a skin sample, right? Back before we had IRB, the Institutional Review Board, when we had some unethical ways. Well, I guess you can't really say it was unethical because we didn't have a board of ethics. But now that we have a board of ethics, we can now declare things unethical. So maybe they might have taken like a skin patch, but now we're like, I don't need to take her skin to know if her skin is soft. I can just touch her. But scientists back in the day were real curious. Evelyn, lay it on us. I'm ready.
Okay, let me summarize this. Is it okay? I just feel like
I'll type your notes out. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me get it. So the dependent variable is the name of the thing we're studying. So
a variable, just variable.
Just variable, right? Right. Sorry, just variable. So in this case, will be Rochelle's skin, right?
That would be the dependent variable, yes.
The dependent variable, meaning like...
Because that's the variable we're measuring or studying.
Okay, so we're measuring our study on Rochelle's skin, which is the dependent variable. But the independent variable will be the different types of lotion that we are going to test on the skin to see the effect. So that's the independent variable because it could change. It depends on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Did I get it?
I said the measure. Yeah, that's correct. I'm typing exactly what you said here in the corner, in the right-hand corner.
So we
the
have
dependent variable. The variable.
Okay, so there is all like so variable is like it would always be dependent variable, right? So there's no such a thing as variable, one thing, independent variable, second thing, and dependent variable, a third thing. We're talking about
a variable. Yeah, okay, so it's like a variable is just a term that I want you to know what it means. I don't want you to throw around the word independent and dependent variable and not know what variable means. The variable is the name of the thing that we're measuring. So like lotion, I could say the lotion that Rochelle wants to use. That's too long of a variable. So the variable name will say lotion. the variable name is Rochelle's skin, right? And what we're measuring is like maybe the softness, the smell, so on and so forth. But the variable is the thing that you put in the computer. It's like when have you guys ever done intake forms? Have you ever had to type up a form? You know, like it's just the name that captures the thing that you're asking. So if you did a survey, you know, of a client, name, address, height, weight, those are variables. Those are just the names of the things that you want to capture. And so when you put them in the system, you would just type it, you know, it'll be like name, then you type in your client's names, and it'll say height, or if you measure height and weight and stuff, then you would put that stuff in. Yeah. So you won't be asked the definition of a variable, but you need to know what a variable is to apply it. No one will ask you the definition of a variable, but you need to just have understanding of this word. It's just the name of the thing that we are looking at.
So, Coach Sierra,
I understand go ahead.
Thank you.
oh, I'm sorry. Were you done?
No, go ahead.
So I was going to ask, because I know two ladies stated, I've only taken it once and I don't recall having a research. I probably had one maybe, but so is it going to be this clear as to letting us know, like, if we're looking for the independent, like, is it going to be that clear in the question? Or we just recognize? Okay.
It should be in the sense that your research section is not heavy on research. The social work exams are known not to be like heavy hitters. It's not nearly as advanced. The research section is not as advanced as maybe the CPCE, the NCE, or some of your other exams. So we're keeping it very like low-hanging fruit, but critical thinking is still a skill set that will have to be applied. So it may not say, what's the definition of dependent? It might say something like this. Let's give you an example. I mean, the Rochelle and the lotion example is an example, but let's make it in-house. So Dion is doing a home visit for a child in need. She wants to study variables in the home. She wants to know if the parents working a lot impacts the child's well-being. Then the question could look like two different ways. It could say, one, which of the following is the A, independent variable? It could say, make it like a number one, so that way you can see the options. It could say, which of the following is the dependent variable? Or it could be one of those really loaded questions, or which of the following answers best matches the independent and dependent variable? And then for this answer choice, you would see something like the same for me. Hold on. So it could look something like this. And then if looking at that very last question, it would then give you options. So it would be like parents working, child's well-being. And you have to choose between two answer choices. So that would be like A. B, child's well-being. Parents working. C, the home. Dion. D, Dion, the home. So these are the 3 variations of questions that you could see on your exam. So you've got a vignette. It could just ask you, okay, which one of the following is the independent variable? Okay, which of the following is the dependent variable? Okay, which of the following best matches? Look at this, the independent, let me draw it in red, the independent and dependent variable. This question is the most difficult because you have to match the order, right? You'd have to say, okay, you have to identify the independent and dependent from the vignette, which is up here. But then you'd have to be looking at, okay, is it A? If you were torn between A and B, you'd have to be able to pick the right order. So those are the most advanced questions. This is why Dr. Pam says it's a reading test, because not only like for a question like that third one, you might be able to understand the content and the material, but if you didn't read the right way, you would have got that question wrong. So let's run this through. Everyone use the chat, okay? We're gonna run through all 3 variations of the question. Dion is doing a home visit for a child in need. She wants to study the variables in the home. She wants to know if parents working a lot impacts the child well-being. Use the chat, everyone. Which of the following is the independent variable? Oops, sorry. Yeah. The independent variable. Okay, if you said parents working, you are correct. That would be the independent variable because the independent variable is impacting the dependent variable. What's the dependent variable? The child's well-being, right? But they're not telling you that. They just put it in a question. You see how that can make it difficult? But if you know what a dependent variable is, and always ask yourself, what are we measuring? Always go with what are we measuring? The textbook doesn't say this. I'm just letting you know from lived experience who's worked in research, it can be really confusing. Like, wait, what are we studying? What are we studying? What is happening? What are we measuring? Then from there, you'll know. Okay, so then let's go to that last question. Which of the following answers best matches? A, notice how they said best matches. This is one of those trick words, right? The not true, the least true, best matches. So you're not only looking for the right answer, but you're looking for the right answer that shows up in the right order. Nicely done, everyone. Nicely done. Everyone got it? Great, great. Should we do another one? Okay, let's do one more.
Yes.
We'll do another one.
So I guess what we need to remember is like the variable, the dependent variable, it will always be what we are measuring against, right?
The dependent variable will always be what we are measuring. It's the dependent variable can be called the outcome variable or the response variable. So the outcome variable or the response variable, it's a variable that we're measuring. The independent variable is sometimes called the stimulator variable or the predictor variable. It's the variable that's like trying to make a prediction on the dependent.
But the exam, we're not going to be seeing all those words, right? We only see dependable and independable, right?
You should. In case you don't, these words aren't bolded in the text, but they might say which term is also called the outcome variable. And then the answer choices could be A, B, C, or D, and the dependent variable would be one of them. But this should make sense. Don't go, I got to memorize other versions of the word. Don't go there. Don't go there. I saw the faces change on the screen. Understand. Don't memorize, understand. You've got this. It's the outcome we are measuring. That makes sense. The dependent variable is the outcome we are measuring. The independent variable is the one who's poking a prod at the dependent variable, trying to get it to do something. So that should just make sense. All right, we taught the main lesson. It's a critical thinking exam. If you were to see the exact words verbatim, this exam would be way too easy. So you should expect to see different variations of the term, but you should have that grounded in confidence because you understand the independent or dependent variable. I can write that for you though. So response variable, outcome variable.
So I guess that we always have to look at a variable and ignore whatever is in front.
I would look at I would go back to this question. What are we measuring? What are we measuring? We're measuring the child's well-being. So, I mean, you could see a question that says, the child, let's put a different color so you can see it. The child's well-being is known as the outcome variable. Same paragraph. So they just added on this orange part. The outcome variable is also known as the A, dependent, B, independent, C, they'll make up something, C, confounding variable, or D, none of the above. So with that same vignette, right? And you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know. I've never seen outcome variable. You still can read that vignette and see that the dependent variable is a child's well-being. So if they were to play with the words a little bit there, always go with what you know. You know that the child's well-being is dependent. You know that that is a variable we are measuring. So even though you may not know outcome variable, this is a very, 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 very real question, by the way. This is what happens in the exam, right? Where you've studied and you've studied, and you're not seeing the exact questions you studied, but you're seeing the terms you studied. So even though that term, outcome variable is, you still know that child's well-being. Okay. Stick with what you know. Stick with what you know. I know they used a new term.
I'm glad
They
we
could
are
do the same
discussing
thing.
this.
Yeah. They could do the same thing for that qualitative and quantitative, right? Qualitative research studies the phenomena of people's lives. What does qualitative research study? You still know that qualitative research studies lived experiences. They threw in that new word phenomena, but you still know what you know. When you get to the exam, if they use new vocab, do not forget what you already know. I'm so serious about that one, because when you get to the exam and you see those new terms, what happens? Well, I must not have studied. The testers must know more than me. Oh, well, I'm going to pick D because D is the most unfamiliar term and I didn't study. So it's got to be D because the test knows more than me. Stick with what you know. You've studied. If a term is familiar to you, it's because you studied. Remember, we don't use these terms in real life. So if a term is popping up to you, it's because you studied. Now, maybe you didn't consciously study it. Maybe you were listening to a Dr. Pam video washing your dishes. And then you get to the exam, you're like, I don't know these answer choices, but B is oddly familiar. Like I remember something about Dr. Pam saying something about this. That something only came from you studying. right? So stick with what you know. Stick with what you know. Now, granted, this is why studying is important. So that way, what you know, you're sitting on a big box of what you know instead of like a tiny little box. But don't get caught in the question where you lose what you already know. With that being said, that leads me to my next study tip. This is the Coach Sierra study tip. Stay out of the danger zone. So this goes to even like Rochelle. Rochelle's testing tomorrow, right? Rochelle has what she knows and Rochelle has what she doesn't know. And for Rochelle, her task today is to make sure those boxes are very clear. She needs to go in knowing what she knows. And she needs to be very confident in what she doesn't know. Same thing for everyone. Don't be in the shades of gray. Stay out of what I call the 50 shades of gray of content. Don't half, I try not to cuss on my calls, but don't half blank, you know that word there. Know a term. Don't half know this one community practice. Either know it or be very confident that you don't know it. And that's okay. But where you get frustrated is when you think you know it and then you get the question wrong. So everything should be in a very clear box. I know this or I don't know this. And anything in the middle needs to be pushed to the side. Actually, I think I just don't really know this. I think I'm just fumbling over my words here. And so it's an I don't know box. And it's okay that you don't know it, but that tells you what you need to study. But when everything is like, I kind of know it here and I kind of know it there and I kind of know it here, then you lose your study path. When you're sitting for the exam and you look at a question and you're lost in the question, if this is the dependent variable, I would say, what are you measuring? But if this is not research, you need to sit in that chair. Dr. Pam says, tell yourself you're the cream of the crop, right? You already made it to this point. And then what Coach Sierra is saying, what do you know from this question? What do you know from the question? What do you already know from what you studied? And then go from there. Okay? Great. That's my little Dr. Phil, Oprah, Maya Angelou pep talk. Thank you for coming. We'll go back to content. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. So that's the independent variable. The next thing we need to talk about is something called nominal ordinal interval ratio. Has anyone heard of these terms? Nominal ordinal interval ratio. These are ways that we can classify or categorize variables. This is the shade of gray for a lot of you. This should be in the I know bucket by the end of this. Okay? I know it. Nominal ordinal interval ratio. Everyone, I know you're muted, but say those with me. Nominal ordinal interval ratio. Okay, do it again. Clap with it. Or tap your leg, whatever. Nominal ordinal interval ratio. Nominal ordinal interval ratio. These are the ways that we categorize variables. So this is what I said, you need to know what a variable is. You need to know what a variable is because there's other ways that variables can be played with, right? Variables in math can be X, can be Y, can be Q, can be L, like all these random alphabet that they randomly choose in math class. All right, so nominal ordinal interval ratio. This shows up as levels of measurement or scales of measurement. I don't know exactly what your language uses for your test because I've seen them both interchangeably. So scales of measurement or levels of measurement. So let's go to nominal. Nominal is names or categories without any order or ranking. Names or categories without any order or ranking. I know you all are taking notes, so I'll go slow. Ordinal. You can order the variables. And the order matters. So then we have interval. Interval is numbers on a scale that have the same measurements or units of space up and down the scale. So it means there's equal spaces between each point. And we'll explain this further. This is the lesson. Just giving you the terms. Give me just 1 second, everyone. I've got some test questions that I'm going to email to myself. They're on my phone. And that way you guys can see them. 1 second. Okay, so while I'm doing this, I'll be multitasking for just a moment while I pull up these questions. Nominal ordinal interval ratio, everyone. Nominal ordinal interval ratio. Nominal is names or categories without any special order or ranking. So this would be, I'm going to pick on someone new. I'm going to pick on Jackie and Kylie. Thank you. I love being you guys volunteering. Okay, so I'm gonna pick on Jackie and Kylie, then I'll pick on you next. So what I want to say is for nominal, think if I was rummaging through Jackie and Kylie's closet, right? I'll find halter tops, tank tops, tube tops, sweaters, long sleeve, short sleeve, right? But the order in which I find them or the order in which I present them to the class has no specific order or ranking. It doesn't matter if I say I found 3 tube tops, 2 tank tops, and 1 sweater in Kylie's closet, or 3 sweaters, 2 tank tops, and 1 halter top, whatever order I said. There's no order or ranking. In the DSM-5, has anyone heard of the DSM-5 or the DSM-4? In the DSM, there's a bunch of lists of diagnoses. The actual names of them don't have an order or ranking. I could just mix them in a box and be like, okay, we got our anxiety disorders, we got our social phobias, we've got our antisocial disorders, but the order doesn't matter. So that's nominal. It's names. Sometimes it's our numbers that have no specific order or ranking. This is what it looks like in a survey. If I say my survey is 1 male, 2 female, it does not matter if I ask you 1 male, 2 female, or 1 female, 2 male. As long as I'm consistent throughout, how I present the information to you does not matter. Like the order in which I present it. Do you feel, we could do the same thing, like, do you feel 1 sad or 2 angry? That wouldn't matter if I, now that looks a little funky. Let me erase that. So like gender, this is the point I'm trying to get to. Gender, feelings, shirts in your closet, list of diagnoses. Those all can be considered nominal because the order in which I'm presenting them to you has no impact on the research. Ordinal, you can order the variables and the order matters. The most common is called a Likert scale. A Likert scale, all of you have seen before. I know it. If you've ever been to the hospital or known someone in the hospital, how much are you in pain? How much are you in pain on a scale of 1 to 10? That's a Likert scale. A Likert scale is a satisfaction scale that is considered a point scale. Because there's points, right? 1 is always, 5 is never, so on and so forth. A Likert scale usually ranges from 1 to 9. Like that's usually the max. You don't need to know this, but I'm just letting you know that it's usually on a range of 1 to 9. You'll never see anything past 10. It's too big of a scale. So interval is when you have equal units up and down the scale, equal units up and down the scale. So the most common examples we use are Fahrenheit and Celsius. Ooh, don't ask me to spell this word. Fahrenheit. That looks close enough. Celsius. Celsius.
I don't think
Right, you can't jump from. Say
I
again.
don't think there's a G in Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit. Do you think you'll take that out?
I think you just take the G out. Let me see. Faren. No, it looks weird.
Can I just draw it, you know, the little F with the degree, and then Fahrenheit.
Could be wrong.
Fahrenheit.
Yeah, it's HEIT. HEIT.
FAREN.
HEIT.
HEIT. That's stupid. Because like height and
Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit, that makes English stupid. Okay, the reason why I say Spanish in my name is because I also speak Spanish. I'm a Spanish teacher. And so that's stupid in my opinion, but whatever. You know, I didn't make the English language. I humbly tell myself I cannot spell. All right. So Fahrenheit, Celsius, equal spaces up and down the scale. All right, equal spaces up and down the scale. So ordinal, I'm going to pick on Evelyn. So Evelyn and I are in 8th grade and we want to date the high schoolers. We're like, oh, yeah. Next year, we're going to date the high schoolers. So we're talking and she's like, okay, so do you want to date the freshmen, the juniors, or the seniors? Because we know the sophomore class, they stink. They just smell weird. I don't know. There's something about that sophomore class that just doesn't do it for me. She's asking me an ordinal question, right? Because the variables are ordered, you know, freshman, junior, senior, that's an order, but we're skipping one. So it can't be interval because there's no equal spaces throughout that scale. We skipped one because the sophomores smell weird in this high school, this imaginary high school. But Fahrenheit has equal spaces throughout the scale. So that's the difference between ordinal and interval. Because ordinal, you can order it, and interval, you can also order it, but ordinal is not required to have equal spaces. Interval has to have equal spaces between the units of space, or like the units that we move from. So this is why I say Fahrenheit or Celsius, because you cannot get from 75 degrees to 80 degrees without going up each scale on the Fahrenheit temperature gauge. It may not feel like that as a human. You know, you might just walk outside like, oh, it's like chilly all of a sudden. But when you're measuring temperature, it goes from 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80. It hits each number. The hint for interval is equal spaces throughout the scale, or the same units of measurement. Ordinal is just that the variables can be ordered.
So, Coach Sierra, so if we're looking at a ruler,
yes, totally. Interval. Great example. And I don't have to spell Fahrenheit. I'm stealing that. Full disclosure. I'll give you credit, but that will be my new example in class. A ruler. Yes. Now, if I broke that ruler and I try to put it back together, what does it become? Ordinal, right? I'm assuming at least a little piece of that ruler is probably going to break off and fly off somewhere. So when I put it back together, those spaces will not be equal. Ordinal. And then ratio has a true and natural zero. I really love ratio. This is me nerding out with you guys about all things research. I think ratio is just really cool. Ratio gives notice that not all variables go past zero. So like your height and your weight, you can't be negative anything. You can't, you are like not born, you're not conceived, you're then conceived, and then you're what, a zygote, an embryo, and then you're a human. Right? And then the circle of life begins. With your height and your weight, you'll never go to the doctor and you'll never weigh in -30. You'll never weigh in -5'11", -4'6", whatever. It's always going to be something above zero. So ratio has a true and natural zero. These variables naturally have a 0 point. Sometimes they call it absolute zero. I'm going to switch screens in a moment. Take your time, finish your notes. Just wanted to let you know I am going to switch screens.
Hold on, I'm gonna take a photo.
Sure. Wait. Before you take that photo, let's do something. Cross that out. Okay, there you go.
So it's still spelled wrong, but it's okay.
There, and you said just take out the
Well, I Googled it, and
H.
it's F-A-H. I'm sorry, FAHRENHEIT. So there's a F-A.
You know what? Watch this. Ruler. And I'm gonna put Dion did this. It's her fault. There we go. Okay, so
For a
when you
minute,
post this
I
picture
was
on
looking at
Facebook,
that word.
Coach Sierra is still flawless in her spelling. Okay, just to make everyone laugh. I'm glad you have the photo. It's also in your books and stuff, but cool. Okay.
Which book? Mine
In your tech, when you study, when your materials that you're using, you will find nominal ordinal interval ratio in there. Whatever your, some of you, what books are you guys using? Let's talk about that. Some of you have different resources. So I haven't given one book, one notice. Whatever your study material is.
Apgar.
Okay.
Yes.
Evelyn, what are you using?
Algar, but there's no photo. It's boring. It's just letters, black and white.
Oh, there won't be a photo, but if you go to your index of the book, and so you should see, if you look up the under like N nominal, you should see a section of the nominal ordinal interval ratio. If not, I can still send these notes out. Don't worry. I can just send notes out on this. Not a problem.
That would be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, totally. Okay, hold on. The copy and paste did not do me justice. Question 4. Okay. Let me do some formatting things for us, then we'll get started. All right, everyone's go ahead and start looking at question 1. It's okay. Which scale of measurement represents data with categories that have no inherent order or ranking? Anyone else want to chime in? A is correct. A, nominal, 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 nominal. You need to know that nominal uses a test called the chi-square. Chi-square is the name of a test that uses nominal data. They work hand in hand. It's the only level of measurement that has a test you need to know. So this is not the beginning of a second lesson where you like need to know nominal uses this, and ordinal uses this, and da 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 da. Okay, chi-square is the name of a test that uses nominal data. You shouldn't see anything beyond that. So if you see chi-square, some people call it chi-square, which you can call it chi, like chi, cheese, cheese, nominal, nom, 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 chi, 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 like a little rat eating cheese, nom, 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 nom. You can think about it that way too, just to have that mnemonic device. Oh yeah, that's like chi-square, nominal. Okay, let's go to number 2. If you have data that includes ranks of students in a race, which scale of measurement would be appropriate? Yeah, nicely done, nicely done, nicely done. Ordinal. Okay, let's go to C. Three, I said C. Three. On which scale of measurement can you perform meaningful addition and subtraction operations, but there's no true 0 point? Ratio. And let's go to that last one. Let's copy and paste it. Ooh, it didn't, hold on. So which scale of measurement includes a true point 0, allowing for meaningful ratios in all mathematical operations? Let's go back. Hold on. I'm like cross-checking. Let's go back to 3. 3, I believe I told you that 3 is ratio,
Yeah,
but I was
thinking
wrong.
that-
3 is,
yeah.
yeah, okay, because I said let's go to C, and then I mixed. I was giving the answer and my brain just got flipped. Okay, so A is nominal. Sorry about that, teacher error. B is ordinal. C is interval. No true point 0. You can perform addition and subtraction because there's equal spaces throughout the scale.
I thought she was trying to trick us because I'm like, wait a minute.
Sorry.
Although I did answer ratio, but then I said, wait a minute.
Call me out. Totally. Yes. Sorry. C is totally interval. And let's say you didn't know what C was. Let's say you didn't know what C was. C is a harder one, right? Because it doesn't exactly match the terms that I've been teaching you. Well, you know it's not D because it says no true 0 point. You know it's not nominal because nominal's names are categories without any special order or ranking, right? Names are categories. So this idea of addition and subtraction wouldn't be applied. Ordinal is tempting, but ordinal does not have equal spaces. So it's harder to do any sort of operations with it if it doesn't have equal spaces. So this is by virtue of rule out, it would be C. even if you, let me be really clear on this question though. Let's say you get a question like this in your exam. You don't know the answer, but you know it's not A, B, or D by virtue of ruling out. This is still a very successful way to get your answer. Very, 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 very successful people still pass exams by the rule out method. And I don't think we teach that enough because we want you to know the answer and we want you to know the content. I think we, as coaches, really emphasize knowing the answer and knowing the content. But when you sit for the exam, if you have to answer a question by ruling them out, you're like, okay, I can rule out A, B, and D, therefore that leaves C. Still pick C. That is a still very successful method of getting the answer right. It shouldn't be your go-to way of taking the test, but it's still a very successful way. So 3 is C, which makes sense because then if we look at 4, which of the following measurements has a true 0 point and allows for meaningful ratios in mathematical operations would be.
Sarah, is that a real question in exam?
Say again?
Is it a real question from an exam?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, that would be very easy if you know what ratio means. That's like a giving away for free. If you know what
ratio means, right? So I would like to think that not every question on the exam is making you pull your hair out. There are some questions on the exam that are like, well, I call them low-hanging fruit, those easy questions, right? Like, which of the following means unethical? And it's like, something that says doing something that's not within ethical practice. And so not every question is going to smack you in the face and like, whoa, where did that question come from? But again, the more you study, the more you can get those points. The reason why we have research group, by the way, is because research is very black and white. It's very black and white. You know the terms, you'll get the answers. It's not like ethical practice where you have to like, what was I doing? What was my behavior like? What was their behavior like? And you have to consider all of these factors to figure out if it was ethical practice. Like the question that talks about if a client gives you food, do you take that client? And the answer is yes. To show cultural respect, you always take food because you could tarnish the relationship built with the client if you do not take, especially something that they homemade and bought for you. It might come across that the client or the person that you're working with thinks that you might think that they're dirty or that you wouldn't eat their food and it's disrespectful to them. And it can break that established relationship. Right? But that's so much thinking like, oh, wait, well, research doesn't do that. Research is very like, does it have a true 0? Ratio. It doesn't have a true 0? Okay, interval. You can order the numbers with no equal spaces, ordinal. Names or categories, no order or ranking, nominal. Boom, 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 boom. Very puzzle piece meets puzzle piece. The issue with that is, go ahead.
Sorry, finish your thought.
I'll just say the issue with that is that it feels like a bunch of loose vocabulary. With that being said, it's so black and white and can be so not related to anything in your life that it feels like you just have to learn a list of vocabulary words that don't really have a home, but their home is the fact that they're just vocab words with definitions that you need to just know, because you could be like the Brene Brown, right? Where you end up being in social work and then you move into research. Brene Brown's a social worker who moved into research and her exam required her to do research and she fell in love with research in the end. So you could be the next Brene Brown and move into research. And this is why this section is required for your exam, even though it may not be the most common reason why people are going into social work. Evelyn.
Yeah, sorry too. I just want to get this straight because I don't want this to have this question in exam and remember something you just said that I would have regretted. I should have asked it to clarify that. You just say something about if a client brings like a homemade dish, you have to take it.
Take it. take it. You don't have
If
to
the
eat it.
client brings you diamonds, don't take it, right?
Right. Gifts, no. Food, yes.
Oh,
Even though
really?
gifts are food, but if it's food, you take it. So the question will not be like, it won't ask you and eat it in front of the client and smile really big and enjoy it. It's not that severe of a question, but it will
Yeah.
ask you, what is the best response if a client brings you food? And the answer is to take it, to accept
Oh,
it.
okay. I thought it was like a no, no, no. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so this is Dr. Pam. I don't know which video it is, but if you watch her Dr. Pam video, she brings this up a lot because this is one of those things that in your real life, maybe you wouldn't do this. Maybe you've had certain certain phenomena, lived experiences that might prevent you. But according to the textbook, according to the exam, you take that food because our number one mission is to still establish a relationship. And you don't want to do anything to break that relationship. I mean, unless you need to break the relationship, but not taking their food is not how you do it. If you needed to end that relationship with that client. Right. Good questions. And also, I'm sure you guys can imagine, right? Let's say I am working with, so let's say, Dion is a parent of a 7-year-old and I'm the social worker working with that 7-year-old and his mom. So Dion wants to gift me some homemade chocolate chip cookies for doing great work. And I'm like, thanks. No, thank you. Easily, she could be like, well, why don't you want, what do you mean? I spent all this time and money making these things for you and you don't want to take them? Like, what does that make you think of me? Like, oh, you just wanted to help my child, but you don't want to accept I mean, just all of the things that can come from that can break that relationship. This isn't related, but my brain went here to connect it, so I'm going to connect it for you. We have a duty and obligation to do minimal harm. This is going back to the IRB thing. So to accept that food is to just try to prevent harm to the client. But because this is research group, I want to connect it to research that we have a duty to have minimal harm. So you cannot, before the IRB stands for the Institutional Review Board. Institutional Review Board.
I think Kelly put a question on the chat. I think you may have missed it, Sierra.
Yeah, I may.
She's put the question, will we go over hypothesis? I just wanted to.
Oh, yeah, sure. We will and we can, but we can and we will. Yes. That's where we end. So what she's about is the null hypothesis and maybe some type 1, type 2 errors, if that rings a bell to anyone. Good question. So let's go back to the IRB. This relates to ethics. You could see a crossover question that talks about ethics and IRB. The IRB stands for the Institutional Review Board. Research has to be approved through the Institutional Review Board or the HSC, which stands for the Human Subjects Committee. We work with people, so ours might go through both. You also get trained through the IRB. So to be a researcher, you have to be trained through the IRB as well. All right, and so part of the IRB is to do minimal harm. So when you're doing experimental studies, you cannot do minimal harm. You have to do minimal harm. So this is where the quasi experiment comes in. If you've ever heard Dr. Pam talk about the true experiment versus quasi, she says that quasi is what you cannot do in agency, or quasi is what you do when you're in agency. I guess better way to do that. I'll write that out for notes and then we'll move on to type 1, type 2, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, everyone? So a true experiment is when you have a control group and a treatment group. Know that treatment group sometimes can also be called experimental group. So you'll see those terms interchangeably. And you randomly select Who goes into which group? This is a term you need to know. Then you have a quasi experiment. No. I don't know what happened there. Okay. So quasi is what is done in agency. Because of it might be unethical to randomize. Like, for example, if you are a group of social workers and you guys all have your specialty, like one is domestic violence specialty, one is maybe occupational hazard specialty, maybe another one is childhood trauma specialty, it is unethical for me to randomize my clients amongst all of you, because your specialty is for the well-being of the client. So it may not be ethical to randomly select, but a true experiment is when you do randomly select who goes in which group. And when you don't, it's called a quasi or quasi. Okay. Got it? Great, great, great. What's a control group? Any guesses? The group that gets the placebo, the group that gets the nothing. And then the control, the experimental group or the treatment group is the group that gets the real drug or the real thing. So let's make this real life, right? Let's say that I've got a study and I am random. I want to see if social workers are actually effective. Is it actually the training of being a social worker, or is it just the presence of someone getting to know me, right? Is it just someone showing up to my house and actually caring about my well-being beyond my grades? So what I'll do is I'll randomly select a bunch of students and put a bunch of people with real social workers and a bunch of people who are dressed up like social workers. So, they might be like business casual, they might have a clipboard, but they're not real social workers. And then I would see, does the actual training of a social worker show to have benefit to emotional well-being of students? Or is it just the presence of someone caring about them? We have done these studies before, by the way. We do know that social workers and counselors and doctors, your training does matter, but it's also important to have friends. Social workers and counselors, mental health providers or providers of social services do have a level of training in terms of your ability to listen and talk and compassionate care that friends don't always have. But we also know the presence of having someone give you your dedicated time and attention is very important. But it doesn't knock out a social worker. That is all to say what you're doing matters, and it's supported by research. And this is my little plug-in to be a part of research, right? Imagine finding a research study that says what you do actually matters. Like, what you do matters, but then finding that in research as well. So that is the appeal of research, is you get to have your hands on the actual data that supports all of the efforts that you guys do on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so we have about 13 minutes left. I want everyone to stretch their arms really wide, really big. I want us to teach type 1 and type 2 error. This is where we always wrap up. And I always ask everyone to just wake up for just a moment. And then I'll let you go, right? It's Sunday. We're studying research on a Sunday. Let's wrap up with type 1 and type 2, no hypothesis. Okay, let's go. No hypothesis, hypothesis. I want everyone to take their hands like this. And I want everyone to say in their hands the words hypothesis. And just in case you pronounce it wrong, say it one more time, hypothesis. And then I want you to take it and crumble it up and throw it out the window because that term does no longer exist. That is a kindergarten baby version of this lesson. But you guys are grown and it's time to get the grown-up lesson. So hypothesis is an educated guess, right? An educated, informed guess on something. That's like the go-to 8th grade, you got that word hypothesis down. But that doesn't exist in adult research. The word hypothesis is too simple of a word. We have 2 types of hypotheses. One is called a null hypothesis. And the other one is called alternative hypothesis. But the word hypothesis doesn't exist. Like you won't be asked about hypothesis. Just how you won't be asked on the word variable, but you need to know what the word means. All right, so a null hypothesis states that there is no difference or no relationship between the variables we are observing. All right, no relationship. Give me just 1 second. My laptop needs to be plugged in. So there's no relationship between the variables we are studying in a null hypothesis. In alternative hypothesis, there is a relationship that we are observing. All right. So all research, I wouldn't say all, I will say 95% of research is testing the null hypothesis. All right. Why do we test the null hypothesis? Why does this even matter? The null hypothesis states that there is no relationship or no difference in the variables we're observing. This is to our benefit because when I test something, I want to know that the research is valid. Valid means accurate. You need to know that. Validity means accuracy. Valid means accurate. I want to know that my research is valid. Not because I wanted it to be, but because the research has proven itself. So this is a kind of related example, and I think you'll get the point in it, and I'll keep teaching. It's like being a baseball coach and watching a kid, maybe it's your kid in particular, hit 3 home runs. And then all the parents are like, wow, your kid only hit 3 home runs because you're the parent and you're the coach. A null hypothesis would say, I don't know what y'all are talking about. I don't even believe in my kid. My kid did it by itself. Look at them. They're amazing. That wasn't because of my hard work. That's because they're hardworking. And so you get the point of, it's not that you're trying to not believe in something or not believe in anyone, but you want your data to be valid because the data is valid itself, not because you as the researcher were maybe biasing the results to get the answer that you wanted. So in that baseball example, it's like you treated your kid the same way as everyone else, and your kid hit 3 home runs, objectively hit 3 home runs. That has nothing to do with me. That has to do with my kid being amazing. My kid's just amazing. But I thought there would be no difference between my kid and the other kids. That's what the null hypothesis states. It states that there is no relationship or no difference. It's an open-minded hypothesis. And the reason why we do that is so when we see our results are not from a biased viewpoint. It's from the most authentic viewpoint that we can have. Does that make sense? It's to decrease the likelihood of experimenter bias, because you guys know the placebo effect. You know, if you want something to happen, your brain can make it happen. This look, phantom pregnancy, phantom disease, that's when you really have convinced yourself that you have something, and your brain will give you all of the signs and symptoms of such. So imagine if I'm in a research and I'm telling myself that, I don't know, let's say like the COVID vaccine, before the COVID vaccine that came out, the Moderna and the Pfizer, let's say there was another one called JIF. Let's call it the JIF vaccine. If I believe that the JIF vaccine was going to work, I could be biasing my results with my perception and looking at relationships that aren't actually there. And that's a problem. What if I now started mass producing JIF, the new vaccine for everyone, but it was actually not authentic? It wasn't valid. My own research bias was biasing those results. That's a major uh-oh in research. So how do we avoid that? We go in with the null hypothesis. We train ourselves to go in thinking, I'm going to do this research, but I'm going to think that there is no difference or no relationship in the variables I'm observing. I'm just going to see what the data has to say about it. Then I can trust the data much more authentically. It's like being devil's advocate against your own research, because you hold the power as the researcher. Okay? Everyone got that? A null hypothesis states that there's no difference or no relationship in the variables we are observing. Why do we do this? To decrease the likelihood of experimenter bias. This is bias that is on the fault or the reason because of the researcher. We know that there is something called participant bias. So this is if Jackie, because she's on this call, Jackie might be like taking a lot of notes and Jackie might be really attentive, but maybe she's only doing that because I'm watching her, right? And maybe outside, she's just like, whatever. That would be the Hawthorne effect, when a participant changes their behaviors or mannerisms because they know they're being watched, which is effective to some point. This is why, teachers do have an effective presence because people pay attention in school. But it's the idea if she really like radically changed her behavior. Maybe Jackie's never, ever been a note taker. And she's like, oh, I know Coach Sierra likes when I take notes. Let me take notes because I want to make sure Coach Sierra sees that. I'm sure, Jackie, you study very great. Just picking on you. Everyone got the point? Okay, let's move on. So then type 1 and type 2 error. Type 1 error, well, first of all, you need to know what it means to now reject the null and accept the null. So to reject the null means I believe there is a relationship in the variables I am observing. To accept the null means I believe that there is not a relationship, right? Because you're in agreement with the null. So if you reject the null, you believe that there is a relationship. If you accept the null, you believe that there is not a relationship. Which makes sense because the null states that there is no relationship. So you're just agreeing with that. If you reject that, you believe that there is a relationship. So Evelyn shouts to me, Evelyn says to me, Sierra, we have no relationship. I'm the null hypothesis and we have no relationship. And I'm like, Evelyn, bump that. I'm your coach. You're the student. We're learning. We're hand in hand. You're not leaving me. I believe that there is a relationship. That's what it means to reject the null. And the reason why you need to know this is because a type 1 and type 2 error has to do with this concept. So a type 1 error says that I believe there is a relationship, but I was wrong. So we call this a false positive relationship. AKA, I rejected the null when I should not have. So a type 1 error is when you rejected the null when you should not have. You made a mistake. These are errors. You made a mistake, so you have to catch that. But what does it to reject the null mean? It says that you believe that there is a relationship when you should not have. You've committed a false positive relationship. We also call type 1 alpha. That's a big deal. I'm telling you that there's a relationship between these two variables when there's actually not. I will let you know right now, you will not get this by the end of the call. This is one of those things that you just have to write and rewrite, and it will make sense. I mean, you might understand it, but to really get it in your head, this is one of those things that repetition really is key. But the idea is, if you can understand that a type 1 error is when you made a mistake in your conclusion. So a type 1 error is when you rejected the null when you should not have. But then what does that mean? Oh, I thought that there was a relationship, but I was wrong. So therefore, I've committed a false positive relationship. If you ever get lost, go back to what the null hypothesis is. The null hypothesis says that there's no relationship or no difference. Always ground yourself there. I know the null hypothesis. So a type 1 is when I reject that null, which means I thought that there was a relationship, but I should not have. So I was wrong. So it's a false positive relationship, which is a big deal. Imagine that GIF vaccine. Imagine if I released a GIF vaccine because I thought this vaccine had a relationship with making COVID go away, but I was wrong. You know how many people could have gotten shots in their arms for something that didn't even work? This happened. This was real life, by the way. I'm using the word GIF, but this happened with the Johnson & Johnson shot. Johnson & Johnson created a one-shot wonder, is what they called it. So they were trying to beat Moderna and Pfizer with the COVID vaccine and create a one-shot wonder, but the one-shot wonder did not work. They committed a type 1 error. So what did that mean? Anyone who got Johnson & Johnson had to go back to the store to get another 2 sets of shots. I hate shots, so I was feeling some type of way about this personally. But that's a type 1 error. They said that there was going to be a relationship when there's not. That's a big deal. That's alpha. Especially if you had side effects to the Johnson & Johnson, then you got to go get another 2 shots with another potential set of side effects. Alpha. That's alpha, alpha, alpha. Big deal. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the other one is beta. Type 2 error is a beta. Type 2. I can make my screen bigger. 1 second. Type 2 error is beta. And this states that I did not believe there is a relationship, but I was wrong. So what does it end up becoming? A false negative relationship. Sorry, that's not, I typed that out wrong. Hold on, let me fix that. I think it's easier for the brain to say, I believe there is not a relationship, but I was wrong.
Coach Sierra, is this the beta? Is this supposed to be the type 2 error?
Yeah. So this is, I believe that there is not a relationship, right? I accept the null. I accept the null that there is no relationship, but I should not have. So this is the opposite. AKA, I accepted the null when I should not have. So if you accept the null says that there's no relationship, right? So you accept that. You're like, okay, I think there's no relationship. You shouldn't have done that. There was a relationship there and you missed it. You missed the impact, which is kind of sad. That's why I have emotions here. It's sad, right? You've done all this research, you've done all this work to prove that this vaccine could maybe help people, but because you committed a type 2 error, you missed that relationship. You overlooked it. So you threw out all of those vaccine tubes when you could have kept them, but because you missed the relationship, it sucks and you have to start all over again. So it's not nearly as big of a deal as alpha, like you put less people at risk. But as a researcher, it does sadden me, like, dang it, I had to start all over again. And I could have maybe avoided that had I known that I committed a type 2 error. But I'd much rather have to start all over again than introduce something into the public that should not have been introduced to the public.
Coach, do you apply this to like when the doctor give you the wrong like lab results or wrong diagnosis? Is this kind of like the same thing?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Imagine your doctor telling you have cancer and you don't have cancer. That's a type 1 error. There's a story about this. If you ever watch any, first of all, this is real life, but any sort of medical news, any Grey's Anatomy, any of those stuff, where the doctor's like, ma'am, you have cancer and you have 3 months to live. And what does she do? She spends all her money. She goes out to Cuba and whatever, and she does all this stuff. And the doctor's like, actually, I'm so sorry you don't have cancer. That what they don't say in the TV show, but we committed a type 1 error. We thought that there was a relationship there between you and cancer and there wasn't. I'm sorry. And it's like, I'm broke. I thought I was, done for. And so they do it in a comedic way, usually in the TV shows, but it happens, especially if you've been diagnosed with something that's been very stigmatized, right? Ooh, hey, you've got this thing, and there's social shame associated with that. So now you're in your own shame bubble and not wanting to tell anyone. And the doctor's like, oh, just kidding. What about all my mental health stuff? So that's a type 1 error. I always call type 1 errors recalls. Like when the baby bouncer, right? They give you the baby bouncer and they say the baby bouncer has a relationship between you and keeping your baby safe. And then they recall it. That's a type 1 error. You could have killed my baby. Why didn't y'all check this beforehand? People are mad about type 1 errors. That's why it's alpha, like angry. A beta is like, dang it, I would have bought that toy, but you told me it didn't work. But everyone, it's like avocados. Avocados back in the day used to not be seen as any sort of health benefit whatsoever. Nobody cared about avocados. And then one man started eating avocado and did research on avocados, and now everyone's trying to get their hands on avocado. So that's like you maybe living your whole life not buying avocados. Used to be really cheap, by the way, because nobody wanted them. So you could have been eating avocados at like 3 cents a pop, but you didn't because you didn't know. And so now it sucks. And if you want to buy avocados, now you got to pay for like $3 a pound. But it is what it is, Bye, Evelyn. Have a great day. Thanks for joining. I know we're a little over time. This is our last lesson.
All the best to you tomorrow, Rochelle. We'll be thinking of you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate
You
it.
got this.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you, Sarah.
you.
It was
Thank
really
you. Thank
lovely
you.
Of
meeting
course, thank
you.
you, thank you. This is where we
then-
wrap up. Thanks, Evelyn.
Oh, are you gonna share with us the recording and the notes?
Yeah, so the notes I will send to you over Pearl. Prudence sends out the recording. We convert it to a YouTube link and she gets them out by Tuesday.
That sounds
I
good.
can do my best to drop that recording sooner for you, Rochelle, if I can get admin permission. I'll
Okay.
let you know.
Thank you.
Fingers
Bye.
crossed.
Okay.
If not, I
Thank
can send
you.
notes out by today, though.
Okay.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
Of course.
Okay. Thank
So
you
that
so
is type
much. I
1,
appreciate
Type
it.
2 error, everyone. How are you guys doing? That's class.
Right. No, that was very, very informative.
Yeah. Any questions? Any lingering thoughts? Anything anyone's like?
I don't like it.
Me either. That's okay. You don't have to like it. It's a
It's-
little tedious. It's definitely tedious and it's definitely a little dry and a little boring. What I recommend doing is like playing your favorite playlist while you study. You know, I don't know, something that just brings you joy. When I study, I light incense. So I have a different sense. I come from a master's of public health. So you have to understand that some of my stuff is like maybe some homeopathic, naturalistic stuff, but in the sense that I have really bad test anxiety. Like I have really bad test anxiety. I didn't apply for jobs because I had such bad like performance anxiety of needing to perform. So I like another scent just to get me out of my head. So incense, candles, essential oils, even like people do like the rubber band thing, you know, when they are super anxious, they just snap it just to like wake their brain up again to say like, get out of that anxiety space. So anything that works for you. I'm not hearing, Kylie, for you that came out of test anxiety. It just came out of like, you know, disgruntled by this section. So if you can just pair it with something that you really like, I think it'll help.
Well, I'm struggling with it. Like, I feel like it's all over my head and I can't comprehend it.
Yeah. So one of the things that we can do, I'll put a plug in here, you know, I do offer individual sessions. I don't teach for the social work exam of its entirety, but I do teach research and assessment. So I'm saying this on the recording as well. If anyone needs any help in a one-on-one setting, well, I have free YouTube videos. Let me promote the free stuff first, always. You know, I have free YouTube videos. If anything you might need, I have 11 free videos on our Dr. Pam channel. So a lot of this stuff can be reinforced. But if you need a one-on-one time, you can also book individual sessions. What I recommend is buying the 2-week session bundle. And then what we'll do is we book 1 2-hour session. We have a 10-minute break in between. And that gives people time to really dive in and get all of their questions answered. I've seen that to be much more effective than a 1-hour session. Usually people end up coming back because they have questions. So if you do a 2-hour session, that gives time for a deep dive, Q&A, and repetition of any content that you might need. But this was a long like 2-hour session. So when you're done, give yourself a brain break and then go back through your notes. Think
Okay.
about, what did I really learn from Coach Sierra's call? What did I not know? What do I still have questions on? Emails are always free, everyone. I tell everyone, emails are free. If you have a quick follow-up question, emails are free. Here's my email, put it on the screen. Now, granted, we don't do entire lessons on email, but if you're like Coach Sierra, one more time, that type 1, type 2 error. Ooh, I thought I had it, but I don't. That's an email. I'm Sierra Turner, SIERRA TURNER, ACFWC, Academic Coaching for World Changers @gmail.com. That is too much to remember. You can always email our Dr. Pam 2020 @gmail.com and then ask for me.
Okay.
Hey, you guys got this. Great work today, okay?
Thank
Of course. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
you.
Dion.
Bye.
Oh, bye.